Καλησπέρα.
Well, I'd like to bid you a good afternoon and welcome to this fifth event that we have in the context of dialogues. This is the dialogues of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation. We're in the Cultural Centre of Stavros Niarchos Foundation, and we'd like to thank it for its hospitality. And I'd like to repeat myself once again that we have the Foundation and the Cultural Centre, which are two distinct organisations, and I say this because the Foundation is in fact a charity which actually thankfully continues to exist after the delivery of the Cultural Centre to the Greek state, and we have this Cultural Centre which is the major donation of our Foundation to the Greek state, and I think it is a very fortunate thing for all of us today that we were able earlier today to announce the details and to make official the first step for the second largest donation after the Cultural Centre Stavros Niarchos of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, and this has to do with actually enhancing health in Greece. So this morning, Mr. Andrakopoulos, the president of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, who is here also, and it is because of this ceremony that actually preceded this event here in Greece, and he met with the President of the Republic, Mr. Pavlopoulos, and he actually talked at length about the various actions of our foundation and how we have, in fact, helped the healthcare sector here in Greece. Afterwards, Mr. Maximou, in the Maximus Mansion that is, so Alexis Tsipras, Prime Minister, and the President of our foundation, Mr. Andrakopoulos, have in fact signed a memorandum in order to begin the implementation of this major donation. It is a donation which actually, in terms of figures, will be more than 200 million euros strong, and it will have a set of actions. I think you saw it in the videos that we're playing. So we have various infrastructure projects and various educational actions, the procurement of equipment, and we are also assisting the air transportation sector of the ambulance service, and we have a new building for the Multi Hospital, a new or from scratch creation of a building for the Children's Hospital in Thessaloniki, and the creation of certain new buildings at the Evangelismos Hospital in Athens. And these are also going to be the seat for the university nursing faculty. And in fact, this is something that makes us very proud indeed. This is the action undertaken by our foundation. This is in fact a landmark day, and this is something that makes us very, very happy indeed. And personally, I'm very happy that we have Mr. Andrakopoulos with us today, and I'd like to invite him here in order to actually open this event officially. Well, we'd like to thank all of you for coming here to this event of our foundation. It is in fact a great pleasure to have you. I'd like to thank Giorgos Komatakis and his colleagues in the Greek National Opera, and Mr. Manoropoulos and his colleagues in the Cultural Centre of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation for their hospitality. And we have a very special feeling when we're here in these venues amongst so many familiar faces, but I must say that above all we're proud. And we'd like to thank our colleagues in the Stavros Niarchos Foundation and Lenia Blavianou, Lena Salutsi, Asimene Koutroubusi, Thanasis Politis, and of course Anna Bousdokou, all together for what they've actually achieved and accomplished in such a short period of time. And they've done it with this concept of dialogues. Dialogue in the times that we live in is a very necessary thing so that we can tackle the many challenges that we face. And this is either as individuals or as members of society. It's only through ongoing dialogue that is based on mutual respect and mutual understanding can we actually take things forward, either overcoming difficult conditions or simply feeling out how the developments will shape up. I think it's only time until artificial intelligence will in fact swallow us up. It's only through dialogue that we'll be able to actually develop our EQ as mankind. And we know that the stereotype that is in it might not be the best, but we need to have a dialogue with ourselves also, and this will improve us in the dialogues that we have with our fellow men and women. So I'd like to hand over to Anna and our panelists. We'd like to thank Eugene Mustafa, who travelled from Germany in order to be with us today, as well as the Barcelona Football Club and FC Barcelona. It's thanks to it and its director that we learnt about Eugene and her work. Thank you warmly, Mr. Dragopoulos. And I think it is a very great honour to have him with us today. And I'd like to welcome you for the fifth time in this monthly meeting that we have. And it is, in fact, an excellent opportunity to talk and to have a dialogue. And it's something that we've said time and again whenever we've met up, whenever you've seen us and watched us through live streaming. We've seen many people comment that dialogue is missing, discussions are missing, and it is thanks to these sessions that I meet up with very interesting people and we discuss at length until we reach here at this point today in order to talk about stereotypes. So I'd like to remind you about the tips that make our life easier. First, I'd like to welcome those who actually watch us through the internet. SNF.org is the website, and you can watch us through live streaming there. And we await your messages and your participation here. And this is true for all who are present today. At any point in time that you might want, you can actually express your views. And if somebody wants, they can actually send their message to snf.org questions and at snf.org live streaming. And it is there that you will actually find us. And I don't think we actually need to be long-winded. I'd like to welcome Eugene Mustafa for being with us today. And we have this young lady who will tell us more about her journey, and a journey that a lot of people have undertaken, leaving their homelands behind. So Eugene left Syria and she arrived in Lesbos, and now she lives in Germany. And we have Jason Antigone Dane, and he's an activist for human rights. And I think that you have even appeal to justice in order to be recognised and registered as a non-binary person. And I must say we have a lot of questions here, and we'll see whether our society is ready and educated, and we must see how prepared all involved parties are and what disposition exists. Is there in fact the feeling that we will collaborate? And we have Konstantinos Rigos. He's the head of the ballet of the Greek National Opera. And we have, in fact, also stereotypes in art. We see that certain ideas are portrayed. These should be, in fact, also a source of inspiration. But we have Ioanna Maria Gertsu next to me. She is the president of the Greek Guide Dogs Association, and she's a psychologist in the Children's Hospital of Hagia Sophia. And it is very important that we're going to speak with her how Greece suddenly discovered what it means to have a guide dog and what is the whole context in order to have the guide dogs find their place. Now, before we actually kick off, I'd like, together with all our guests, and before we actually put all the issues, and of course this is a discussion that cannot be exhausted because it's timeless. We see it actually being a constant subject which is changing form throughout time and societies. And we would like to see a video that we've seen from the Bartza Foundation. And this will allow us to actually get to have, in fact, a first taste about you about Eugene Mustafa and her great love for Barcelona, and then she's going to speak. But we said we won't actually say a lot about football because I am not actually that well informed, so I don't want to be in a difficult position there. I'd like to say the Barcelona Foundation, through its educational program, the Football Net methodology, actually has a set of actions for children who are, in fact, refugees in Greece, Italy, and Lebanon. So I must say that this is a huge contribution of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation through a donation, and we will see what this actually pertains to. And I wanted to say that one of the main visions and aims of the Barcha Foundation is to actually promote values, and to promote values such as humility, effort, ambition, respect, and teamwork. So all of these together, if we actually put them actually in sequence, we see, or in order, its heart. So we see that this is the target of each and every one of us separately and together, and this is what we want to actually bring about. So the grant of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation to the Barcha Foundation is, in fact, the expenses of this programme. So it's through the Barcha Foundation that we got to know Eugene Mustafa, and we'd like to thank you, Eugene, for being here. And I think we can now watch the video that the Barcha Foundation has actually loaned us. And I'd also like to welcome its director, who is with us today. And she has also come to Greece in order to be here today, Maria Vallis. So let's...
I think, Eugene, that we enjoyed what we saw, and we actually saw you having such a good time on this journey, and we realized what you went through and all the beautiful experiences that you had when you were given this great surprise by Barcha Foundation. I know it's rather awkward, but because there are two sides to life, I will ask you to tell us a few things that you would like to tell us from the other journey, the great journey that you went on, coming originally here to Greece from Syria, and at what age? So what age did you come to Greece?
So when I did the journey, I was 16. As you said, I arrived in Lesbos. Thank God this time I'm not wet, I'm not tired, I was not about to die, nothing happened to the plane. It's glad to be here again and to make new memories. So during the journey, I've crossed 8 countries to get to Germany. It was tough. Nothing is easy, actually. We faced rough terrain, boring regulations, a lot of trouble, I think. But there were times when I actually needed some help, needed a lifeline, and needed to think like Peter Pan. So Barca came to help, actually, because just a few months before the journey, Barca had won the triple in Europe. So I had to turn to Peter Pan and think, okay, that's fine. We won every title this year, so it doesn't matter. Everything is going to be fine again. Yeah, so it wasn't easy, and as I said, I'm happy to be here again and to make new memories. I've been to the Acropolis. It's beautiful. I didn't think the ancient Greek thought of a wheelchair user visiting. It wasn't the easiest place for a wheelchair, but we made it. We made it, and let me tell you, you have one of the most beautiful capitals ever. Though I would have also wanted to visit Mount Olympus. I really want to meet Zeus. Yeah, and Hera and Poseidon, though he's in the sea, of course. Yeah. And of course, the city of Olympia. I want to actually run the marathon next year, maybe. Yeah. So, yeah, I've had a great time.
I want to ask you where and when you learned how to speak such good English.
Since, because of my disability, I was not able to attend school, so I only had TV. It was actually my window to the world, you know, in terms of entertainment and education equally. So I learned English watching a soap opera with Arabic subtitles in the beginning, and then 1 month or so later, I was like, no, I understand. I even don't need the subtitles. So I would like to think of it as, I mean, my disability. I would like to think of it as the thing that shaped the person who I am today, and I think I have nothing to be ashamed of. Yeah, so that's my identity, and I'm really proud of it.
I would like you to warm up a little bit and to enter into the discussion and to hear from each of you separately. And I'd like you to dwell from what Eugene told us. And we heard about the stereotype, about how a society treats a person who comes from another country under such conditions, difficult conditions, because we've seen the refugees and migrants going through all these problems all these years. So the question is, what about stereotypes? Stereotypes regarding refugees and migrants. What do you think about that? Has anything changed? Well, I think we are all strangers, even in our own families sometimes, even in our group of acquaintances and relatives. Maybe we don't feel the same as for refugees and migrants, but sometimes you're not accepted. And that's what I mean. So sometimes we may find ourselves in a similar position. And our ancestors have often been migrants and refugees. So I think that this is something that can happen. We can all become migrants or refugees, and it may affect our lives in a dramatic way. So we must think of human rights, and we have to be compassionate, and we have to see things through other people's eyes. We have to put ourselves in their shoes. So we're talking about foreigners in general and how they're treated by others. I think this is a part of society and part of individuals. People can be both hospitable, but both cruel or hard or hostile, depending on how they feel each time and how they position themselves vis-a-vis others, but also vis-a-vis themselves. So it all has to do with what you feel as a person and how you treat others. So the thing is, can you handle the person in front of you, the person you're facing, and how, as a society, can you treat people who come towards you, those that you're afraid of and those that you want to be closer to? Ioanna Maria and I discussed this a bit, and I think, Ioanna, it would be good for us to look at the following after having heard what the other speakers had to say. We heard of this concept of foreigner or stranger. We have the two sides inside of us, meaning the person who will open the door to a stranger, but also somebody who will close the door in somebody's face. And has this changed in society? Has there been a development of sorts? Well, generally speaking, I think it's difficult for people to accept people who are different in Greece, whether we're talking about people with disability, whether we're talking about refugees or LGBTQI. And every person experiences what is different and the other at a different level. You have indirect racism, for example. And for example, we go into the internet and we start writing horrible things about, for example, others who are not the same as us. And there can also be indirect racism. For example, we can park where disabled people are supposed to park. And there are also other types of racism where you don't break the law, But, for example, you are obliged to hire somebody with a disability at work, but you might never give him anything meaningful to do and no proper work. Or you may say that you accept somebody who has a disability or somebody who is LGBTQ or somebody who's not dressed the way we would like him or her to be dressed. And inside us, within us, we can't accept that person. So we pretend to accept them, but sometimes we don't, deep inside of us. And here I'd like to stress that Greece, over the course of the years, the last few years, and I'm talking about the crisis that we are experiencing in Greece, so Greeks now in the last few years never fully accepted people who are different. We're trying to move forward, trying to make progress, but it's difficult. And unfortunately, the most vulnerable groups are suffering the most. People like refugees, for example, who come and reside in Greece. And we see that they're Greeks who are oppressed, people who have no work, people who need to vent their anger. And sometimes they turn against those who are most vulnerable. And that's their way to vent their anger. So abroad, what's the image abroad as regards the way in which people treat others? Well, abroad, let me tell you about what the situation is abroad. Abroad, they accept others more. That's the bigger picture, if you like. We see that most people accept people the way they are. I don't think that's true. I apologize. What do you mean by abroad? Because we have this division between East and West. There are societies that are less accepting than Greek society. They are harsher, more cruel. And I think that there's a global crisis. And this global crisis has led to the surfacing of behavior that goes counter to people who are different in any way. I don't know if this is the subject of today's discussion, of our dialogue, but if we just think of this in general, I think that Greece belongs to the Western world. And according to Western standards, we treat people who are different to in the way that we should. But I don't think that there's such a big difference compared to other countries. Of course, other countries in the West are far ahead of the Greeks, but I don't think that we're that far behind, that we're that backward. I think that Greek society is trying. I know it's hard. I know it's hard, but it's trying to deal with the situation. But Greece is witnessing a crisis, and a lot of Western countries are under crisis, and this makes us more introverted, and these instincts, so Eugene, I'd like to add that this is an element of Western civilization. These two poles, for example, we find it everywhere. White, black, for example, Christian, Muslim, men, woman. What in the East, things are different. It's more traditional. They're more traditional things. I'm not talking more about rights. I'm saying that there isn't this two-pole system in that world. So we have different things in the East, different forms. It's not that, it's just different. I think that this bipolar system is found everywhere. And sometimes you have yin and yang, and these two opposites that are together. I don't think that this is something that is only found in the Western world. I think it's got to do with man himself. I think that we try to distance ourselves between two poles, and sometimes we have these boxes. I'm talking a little bit about culture, and I'd like to ask Eugene a question. Tell me your position, your view, based on your experience, but also based on your fellow travelers on your journey, people that you met, similar cases, but also different cases, different stories. So how did they experience and how did you experience the acceptance or rejection when they reached their destination?
First, I would like to add something to what all of you said. I think an important point that needs to be addressed is the guest's part in the whole process of acceptance and non-acceptance, because I believe that it's natural for you to fear, for humans to fear the unknown, the unexplored, something that we have no idea about. So I think it's a duty to be a good representative of your group of people, whether it be the LGBT community or someone, the disabled people or refugees. So in my case, I think I fully expected the kind of fear and rejection and reluctance to receiving refugees because, well, we are different. We dress differently. We have different religion. We speak differently. We eat differently. So, why would I expect everyone to accept me so quickly when they know nothing about who I am as a person? But I hate to be given that label. I just think of myself as a guest in Europe, and I believe that when you are a guest, you have to behave well to your host and be a good example. So I actually don't blame anyone for being afraid or reluctant or not liking me in person, but I just keep doing my work and kind of improving the image of refugees and displaced people. So just keep doing your work. Don't blame anyone for your problem, you know. And as for the examples you're looking for, I think when it comes to the acceptance of the other, it's different in different countries, and it depends on the mentality and how much you are exposed to the other in a way. If you're in a protected environment where you are forced to consider something or the other normal and other things wrong or unnatural, then I believe it's inevitable that you are gonna be racist or be unaccepting. But if you live with with all colors of the rainbow, then it's going to be easier for you to accept everyone.
Είναι πολύ ενδιαφέρον.
It's very interesting to see how people themselves that feel that they're stigmatized, that feel that they have been dealt with in a stereotypical manner, how they will avoid actually perpetrating this, and how they will actually not actually accept the stereotype, and not to actually mind only his own business, but rather to be able to forge ahead, and how to avoid being trapped in what the stereotype imposes. But I think that what has been said here is that no man is a stereotype. I think let's see how we can go about this, because each and every one of you actually represent something and symbolize or a symbol of something, and I'd like you to share this. But I think what is important here is that nobody is a stereotype, that every person is different and they have a, and this otherness is what urges that person on and to actually forge their own path. But let us see how this will actually be done. So I'd like to actually come to you, Jason and Antigone, to actually give your view, because earlier when you each presented yourself, I referred to you each individually, and I actually said he or she when I referred to them. You've actually chosen to be referred to as it. So Jason Antigone is your name, and we talked about your action before. So before you actually add to what Eugene said, I would like to actually come to the next point here, which has to do with gender, if a gender exists and if it's recognized socially. And we, of course, are in a society that learns from birth that when we refer to a girl, we say she, and when we refer to a boy, we say he. So what does it mean? Well, I feel very sorry when somebody says that I feel that I'm invited. I don't think that the Greeks who were migrants in the past felt that they were invited. So I think people should feel that they could go anywhere in the role, and they shouldn't feel that they're simply a guest, but they should have a key role. And of course, this is something that we all actually have brought about. Now, sexuality and the spectrum. We know that the gender distinction is in fact something that distinguishes before our birth. So the first question is it a girl or is it a boy? So are we going to paint the room pink or blue? And we'll have different stereotypes from these perceived genders. So we see that social studies and gender studies have shown that there are no two biological genders, because we have the intersex persons, and that means that their internal or external genitalia might be from the opposite sex that was assigned to them from birth, and this can also be in terms of hormones. So we have intersex people, but each and every person has a different gender. So I think it's overly simplified to say that there's only one gender. So gender is societal. It's a societal construct and not a biological fact. So this has to do with how one views oneself. Personally, when it comes to stereotypes, even on a superficial level, I felt that I could never adopt stereotypes, but with respect to genderless, I actually informed myself, and you've actually decided what you were assigned to. You're an agenda, and you can be binary on binary. If you're binary, you're within the man-woman two pole way of actually defining yourself, or you can be non-binary. So can I actually interrupt you here? So it's obvious that you were referred to as all. I couldn't say all of us, so I said all. So do you actually accept those who accept their own gender, that they accept it and they define themselves? So I think that this is something that has remained from the past. Is it a matter of black and white? No, it's not a matter of black and white. It's a matter of respect. We shouldn't assign gender at birth. It's a matter of human rights. So if I have the illusion that I know my sexual orientation, so the gender identity has nothing to do with sexual orientation. Okay, let's say that I know either of the two. Is this in fact a construct? I don't know it. It's a personal view with respect to gender. My own. No, it has to be personal. Other people can't define you. So I'm talking about what I feel now, what I feel about my gender. Is it something that I was taught, or is it what I am? I think it's what you were taught. But why do I have to accept your view? It's not mine. So it's something that's taught in all the universities worldwide. Or why should I impose my theory on you? And why can't we coexist? No, it's not a matter of imposing a theory, and there's always the right to self-determination, and we see that the trans non-binary was not actually included in the legislation in Greece, and I actually had the first appeal to justice for the deletion of gender, so it was not actually recognised as that, but they allowed me to include Antigone to my name, so it's Jason Antigone, and they've actually included non-binary. So you actually recognise this gender identity, but you don't delete the gender. So what does acceptance mean? So societal acceptance mean in your day-to-day life? So in any meetings that you have. So beyond talking about me, we see that the patriarchal and the sexual stereotypes are so well entrenched with respect to our gender, the gender identity, the expression of gender, how we express ourselves and dress, and our sexual orientation. It's very difficult to uproot these. So it's something that we all can understand, that there are specific norms that most individuals follow. So I walked from Exarchia, downtown Athens, to me, and very few people actually turned to give me a second glance. So you're a popular person, perhaps because you're so popular. I mean, people know you well because you're an activist, you defend these rights. Well, I don't know whether it is because they recognise me or because they accept what I stand for. I don't know if that is the case or not, but I speak before all media, because we know there's not a lot of visibility with respect to human and animal rights in the mass media. So I think it actually helps further understanding of trans people and the LGBTQI community by their families. So we've actually started the whole discussion about gender, and this actually is a strike against patriarchy, and this is something that is negative for men and women, because they teaches them to actually be strong, or to actually express their gender in a specific manner. So I'd like to ask Ioanna, Konstantinos and Eugene. Well, I think it's a bit of a stereotype to actually assign a gender to a person. It's a bit like religion. I know religion is taught, it's not an instinct, but I think that the gender identity should in fact be developed on the basis of people's way of thinking and their own experiences, and that must be in fact within a space of freedom. And I think that it's also something that is difficult, because I work within a hospital with intersex people, and it's not something that's normal. Normal is obsolete. I'm not talking about not. Okay, people can use the words that they want. So they have faced a lot of health problems. I mean, I'm talking about health. I'm not talking about a handicap or choices made by individuals afterwards. So there are many problems that these children face when they're born, and they have both sexes. So I think that after that, people should be free to express what they want and who they are without actually violating others' rights. I feel to be very much a woman. I don't know if you actually see that with your own eyes. I love being a woman, and okay, every woman and every man and every it should have their own freedom to express themselves as they want. That's what I wanted to say. And let me add something with respect to societies. As we are in Greece, we see that the overall picture in Greece is that this does not exist. So this has to do with standards, and fascism, stereotypes exist everywhere in the world, but the fact that we have, in fact, religious leaders actually going public and stigmatizing others, and actually there's no sanctions, and so the fact that political leaders can speak, in fact, so publicly and to the detriment of human rights is very bad indeed, and we have to find a way of resolving this. We see that we cannot actually let that pass. We cannot live in 2018 and to hear such hate speech spoken so openly, and stereotypes that make people vulnerable, weak, and we see this prevalent, in fact, amongst many people, and sometimes it is done very subtly, of course, and it can even be channeled against people who have handicaps, and they're considered to be superheroes, and that can be a rather heavy burden, because they're believed to be superheroes and they can actually fly over the illegally parked cars, and it's a bit like the illegal terrorists. So that's all.
So if I were to say something now, let's talk about theatre or art or dance. Well, there I can say that dance or theatre, well, try to break stereotypes. They try. Let me just give you an example. Even Jason Antigone uses the stereotypes of men and women, and actually this is a performance, because Jason Antigone takes features of the man and the woman and uses them in order to actually execute this theatrical performance in society. It's not a performance. I'm not a performer. Then why are you using a dress? Because there are no clothes that belong to genders. Well, in this way, you say that anything that can symbolize anything is actually invalidated. Well, we know that priests also wore frocks. Well, I wear jewelry, but men used to wear jewelry. Well, anyway, I can say that in art, in general, in art, there are no stereotypes. I don't think that it's always the case, says Jason Antigone, but let me finish first. Let me finish. So art has the possibility, more than any other means, to actually break stereotypes. All the years that I was a choreographer and that I've been a choreographer, I never thought that I should only use a man or a woman for a specific movement. You had performers, and this movement would then take on various features of the dancer, male or female. It's not that I said I'm going to choreograph a female dancer or a male dancer now, because I don't think that this is the right way to go about it. It's not common sense to do that. So I think that in art, you can manage stereotypes and you can break stereotypes. It depends on the choreographer. Well, very interesting. Everything that you touched upon was very interesting, but I have to be the bad guy now, the bad person. And I wanted later on to ask a question as to whether art behaves in a stereotypical way or not, or how art deals with stereotypes. Well, art can't do anything. It's people who actually work in the artistic world. Now, the audience or your colleagues, how do they add on more stereotypes? Let me just mention a simple example. They say, oh, this is too commercial. I'm not going to go to this performance. This performance is too classy for me. It's too elitist. I'm not going to go. So what has this led us to? And what does it create in the case of an artist? Well, I can say that I have worked hard and I actually have come here and I'm the ballet director of the GNO. We know your wide range of work and you've actually been very creative and you have been attacked by many. So you've been under fire, under criticism. So I think you have a very complete picture of what's happening out there. Let me use myself as an example, a good example or a bad example. You decide. So as was mentioned by Eugene in the beginning, I was never interested in creating stereotypes, i.e. that I have to be accepted by a specific group of people or a specific number of people. I just created what I wanted to create. And this was addressed to people who appreciate quality work. And then I did things of my choosing, things that can be commercial and not so high quality. But I never accepted this, really, to tell you the truth. And I followed the path I wanted to follow. I wanted to see how people act towards me, be it, for example, in a nightclub when you have singers dancing and singing and the audience throwing flowers and showering them with flowers, or people cursing them or whatever. So what I'm saying is that insistence and persistence does away with stereotypes. It breaks down stereotypes and it allows us to move forward. This path is not a bed of roses, and there are many excuses on both sides. But this is something which is natural. As I said, movement has got nothing to do with the two sexes. And what are stereotypes? Well, stereotypes have to be broken down and you have to create something of your own. What does stereotype means? It means copying something. Is there a copy of another person? No, nothing is a copy. All human beings are unique individuals. Everything that happens is unique. No movement can be repeated. No word can be repeated or replicated in the same way. So there are no stereotypes. And all performances, even the same theatrical performance, is different every day it is performed. So in human nature, there is no stereotype in the sense that we use it. We can even say that we've made a huge mistake when we say stereotypes vis-a-vis humans and who we have before us.
Interesting discussion, but what I wanted to add to the topic is that I think that the reason stereotypes exist is because I think we lack curiosity to know more about different groups or of people or different professions. I think that that's why people think that girls should wear pink, because in the 40s there was this mass media introduction to that idea. And I think because people do not have the access to different cultures, different types of people, they tend to rely on these sources to get the information about people, whether it be that Indian eat curry or that Japanese are all smart. I don't know, but I think that because we have got this general lack of curiosity about discovering different fields of art or even different cultures and people. That's what leads to stereotypes when you rely on the mass media or this a very intense source of information that might lead you to the wrong direction and lead to that stereotyping when you are not open to every possibility and every kind of surprise, when there is something that is considered normal and something that is not.
Ioanna?
Ioanna? So in parallel, let us touch upon something else. Let's talk about the superhero, about the superhuman who actually has some kind of disability. So here, what do they have to come up against, these people with disabilities that are considered superheroes? Well, they are against everything in Greece. As I said, we are not a very hospitable country when it comes to people with disabilities. And I'm talking about basic stuff, and I think the only way in order for us to overcome stereotypes is through acceptance, so that these people look at us. We're trying to make a difference. And we are 1 out of 100 that trying to make a difference. Why? Because we have gone against stereotypes and we have gained acceptance, the acceptance of others. But I think that stereotype ideas and stereotype behaviors are actually very convenient for people sometimes. And sometimes, however, they make us stay in our shell. And people don't open up. They don't go down the road. They don't look at reality in the face. Because that's the only way you can accept people for what they are, as they are, but at the same level as you, because there needs to be interaction. And we need to see each other as equal. For example, we de facto believe, and I mentioned this before, that people with disabilities are superheroes. And why so? Because we never give them a real opportunity to go to the outside world and to prove that they can work 8 hours a day and then go home and be exhausted. And in order for you to train a guide dog and a blind man to work together, well, this requires a lot of hard work. And the blind people and the visually impaired, in order for them to know how to move around with a dog, a guide dog, need to fall down, they need to cry, stand up again, and slowly learn how to do it. So we have to give them the right to work hard and prove themselves as fellow human beings. We keep saying something, but it's just in our head. It's on paper. We don't implement it in practice. I think that's where the problem lies. And let me say at this point that many times people tend, for example, to attribute all sorts of characteristics to the disabled and say that it's because of the disability. But this actually means that they forget their right to self-determination, their right to choice, their right for them to claim to be an atheist, for example. Everything is because of their disability. They're atheists because they're disabled, for example, because they're bitter towards the rest of the world. So they always say that they don't want to have children, for example, because they'll be afraid to raise their children because they're blind, for example. And they actually give you a ready answer, and they say that this is your answer. But it's not true. It's as if you have to be part of the masses and that you have to be a disabled part of the masses. It's as if the law is responsible for everything, and as if disability is to blame for everything. So we have labels. We stick labels onto the disabled, but by sticking labels, we don't see what's hiding behind the disability, who Ioana Maria really is, who Nugene, if I got your name right. Okay. So why should we de facto consider something as being like that and not something different? So we have to think differently. Only in that way can we move forward, and only then can we have more infrastructure. Now, de facto, we think that blind people cannot move by themselves in the street. Why? Because there are many obstacles. And what do? We actually put more obstacles in this poor person's way. So that's the problem. Eugene.
But if people think that way, then it's your chance to prove them wrong. I personally enjoy the stereotype that they put on me, or the label, because then I enjoy the reaction when I defy it. Like, oh my God, what does even loving books or being a Barca fan has to do with my disability? It's like they do not think of you. They do not think of anything that happens in your life as separate thing from your disability. So that's why I enjoy the reaction when I behave and act normally. And that's what I say. It's like when they say that you cannot walk on the street, just do it and enjoy the reaction. You know?
Συγγνώμη, έχεις απόλυτο δίκιο, αλλά το πρόβλημα...
You're absolutely right, but the problem in Greece, perhaps you've not experienced it as we have. The problem is what I said before, that the ideas, the stereotypes are so transcendentally stuck in our minds and fixed in our minds that a lot of people with disabilities, or most people, don't even realize that they are disabled and what the disability means, and they can't actually go out and defy society, because they will tell you, okay, you don't have to do anything. You don't. When you go to school, they'll simply give you a grade, and they say that you can't do anything else. And even though they say they're superheroes, you see that you've never actually got to grips with reality. I don't know if what I'm getting at, because you've actually not accepted how you are. That's the problem in Greece. So I would like to say that I would like to remind everybody who's actually watching through live streaming and through snf.org live streaming, the way that you can actually come into contact with you. We receive your questions at snf.org questions, and with respect to what you say, I would like to raise a point that you said before. When does criticism actually become bullying? And I would like to actually invoke your own experiences, how this can be managed by the person themselves. I would take that question. I think that it's obvious when the criticism is well-intentioned, or questions in order to understand things better. There are people who are interested about something. They'll ask a question and they will get to grips with it, or it might take them some time to understand it, or there might be certain people who are simply trolling. So I think that there is a limit to criticism. And okay, hate speech is something that is very widespread in our days, and we know that they actually hate limits, and they consider hate speech to be a view or criticism. Konstantinos, I would like to agree also. We see that criticism is within the limits of a society that accepts what we say. Whatever we say includes criticism. Even when we say good day, I can say good day, okay, what's up with you today? And behind that, there's the harshest criticism ever. So this is something that we can't avoid, because it is within the within ourselves, within our personality. So that means that from the moment that I'm judging everything around me, I cannot actually not accept criticism. But of course, hate speech is something that's completely different. Jason Antigone, on the street, have you actually had to deal with curious looks? I mean, when you're on the public transport, Konstantinos, we've also seen that at the theatre. Okay, what I want to ask you whether you can actually been criticised that you've done something commercial, that you did it for the money, because you know that people impose their view on us, and well, I must say that criticism varies. Even my friend Costadino said that I actually am performing, but that's not the case. So the stereotype can be considered that you have undertaken a role, and this is not actually something substantive. I'm saying I said it to facilitate things. Well, in something that's a bit more spontaneous. I'm not talking about somebody who's actually not thought about it, but somebody who's spontaneous. You meet a parent with a child. Yes, I have met a father, and you feel uncomfortable. And yes, I have actually met father with its child, and I say it was a girl, but we don't know what the child will be when they grow up. So they've actually told me that, oh, you are doing a very good thing. Criticism, maybe, but I think I receive a lot of love because I actually walk in Athens, which is actually a multicultural centre. So actually things are improving, I hear. This is something that I will take home. But in order to be devil's advocate, I'd like to ask the following. Perhaps only the love that you see is something that you want to see. No. In order to advance, in order to achieve the purpose that you want to, the purpose that you're striving for. No, I observe everything and I speak with everybody and people who don't know anything about this. And with great surprise and joy, I must say that I actually see boys that are stereotypical boys, and they look at me and say, or think to themselves that I could actually do something else. Okay, the way I dress could be a bit different. So I see a joy. They hide it, but I see this joy. Well, that's a very optimistic note indeed, and I think it's very far removed from what we know. So the stereotype is disappearing. No, I don't think, says Jason Antigone. I think that this is something that's very deeply entrenched, but I think the response itself is very positive. Now, I'd like to continue and actually come back to Eugene and Ioanna. And I'd like us to talk, Ioanna, a bit about the following. It's something that we'd actually talked about in our discussions about exploitation and abuse. The exploitation and abuse of people who actually face any type of disability. At what level are we talking about? You had actually said in one of our discussions that often they are in fact victims and victims in various shapes and form. This is true. Often we see that there is a lot of sexual violence against women with disabilities, and either they marry in order to have somebody to help them, or they're unable to respond because they have an intellectual disability, or they might be tetraplegic, so they cannot actually react or speak and express what they feel easily because of quadriplegia. So there is also the exploitation when we have children at home that have disability, and the parents might want to actually receive the welfare benefit and not use it for the benefit of the child. There is also the abuse that we all have on the streets, and it has to do with putting ourselves at risk every day when we walk on the streets, and that's a form of abuse actually. But I'd like to come back to the matter. And we have also the abuse where we're stigmatized. It's something that goes below the radar, and that we don't even seem to perceive it. So this is something that we have to actually learn how we can actually go beyond what we have in our minds, the ideas that are fixated, are fixed in our minds. So we believe that a girl with disabilities can or cannot do specific things. And sometimes we have a very subtle abuse. For me, it's abusive not to show, in fact, a video. So for people to actually feed me rather than show me how to eat, whenever there is, in fact, a video for a disabled person, to show it, you know, with very melodramatic music, or when people actually come to me, they pat me on the head and they're promoting this image of the weak person with disability. For me, this is in fact forms of abuse which we do not actually recognise and acknowledge. We don't actually see this. The fact that we don't have ramps for the buildings, and people that have wheelchairs have to be lifted in order to have access, and I think that is humiliating, actually.
And unfortunately, we see nobody dealing with disability issues because there's such a big problem, really. We're talking about the policy. You see ministers, for example, who are disabled, and nobody says anything about them. We have different associations that unfortunately make abuse because they take funds and use them themselves and squander them. And sometimes people say to you, when you tell them all this, how can I reveal the scandal? How can I disclose the scandal? If we go and accuse a minister who has disability, people will go out into the streets and demonstrate. So this is a bit hypocritical, or it's a bit bipolar, or it's both, actually. So we are trying to keep people down by offering them what they want to hear. But it's as if there's silos. This is a problem, that there's silos and that there are limits, and this shouldn't be right. This isn't right. I don't know if you understand. Anybody can take the floor. Anybody from the audience can say something. The lady here in the corner, but we can hear from Eugene before the lady gets the microphone.
As I always say, I think in the case of a disabled person, it always depends on your luck, where you are born, how you are received by your family and your society, and all of it. Because I feel that humiliation. There is something that I absolutely hated every time. I absolutely hated meeting new people, because there would be a recount of the story of my birth and how I turned out to be a disabled, and my mom would try to tell everyone how smart I am, or how many books I've read, as if she's trying to compensate for my disability, and I think that it's absolutely humiliating to feel that way, because I felt like people had such low expectations of people with disability, and it depends on your luck and where you are born, because I have heard of stories of people that hid their family members who have disabilities because of shame. And yeah, so when I grew up, it wasn't the most welcoming societies of the different, and that's why I didn't get a chance to go to school until I got to Germany. So that's, I mean, the biggest difference for me. Yeah. So I absolutely hated the low expectations or the look of pity that I observed on the faces of people that when I meet them for the first time. They thought I was miserable, useless, and could do nothing.
Σας ακούμε.
Can you hear me? First of all, let me thank all the panelists. I personally would like to thank the journalist as well, because it is thanks to her intervention that this discussion was triggered, and it allowed me to think and engage in critical thinking as a member of the audience. The truth is that the greatest violence and abuse made me think of René Sar's verse, "The loudest cry is the cry coming from the people's eyes." This is something that the French poet wrote back in 1944. it's the eyes that have the loudest cry. So I'd like to address Antigone Jason, the activist, and I'd like to pose a question, if, of course, the others from the panel would like to respond as well. But because I'm a friend, I actually would like to ask a question. And I'd like to say that I and friends have wondered. So it's not just a question that came to my mind. So, dear friend, Antigone Jason, the question is, how stereotypical is it to think of women as the beautiful sex? And how awkward in a position our women are to have to act beautiful in their daily lives, in their daily routine, no matter what age they're at, from a very young age to a very old age. And how difficult is the position of beautiful or handsome, rather, men. So to summarize, we have this stereotype that women are the beautiful sex. And I think this makes both men and women feel awkward. Is this the case? Could you tell us what you think about it? Because I respect you, and I know you have a great brain, and I don't know if others would like to add, other members of the panel. Well, I can't say something because I don't define myself as a woman, and I don't try to personify a female stereotype. But I'd like to say that I think that saying that women is the beautiful sex, well, I think it's like trying to put women into a category and saying to them, you have to be beautiful, you have to be prim and proper, you have to be well-dressed, and we're victimizing women. But most victims don't realize that they are victims. But men are also the victims of patriarchal society because men have to be successful. And even the way they dress, I'm talking about the male dressing, it's like a uniform. Suits are like uniforms. It's the uniform of the patriarchal society. And this is why clothes are so different, whereas in certain ages, men and women could have dressed alike. I mean, their clothes weren't that different. And even now, we could dress in a similar fashion. So I think this is something we need to discuss because we see that there's a big inequality. And I'm talking about this inequality that is created even before we're born. I think that these male and female stereotypes change over time. They change over the course of centuries. So now men, the way we see men now compared to the previous decades, that has changed greatly. So I think that everything's fluid. Everything is in flux. For example, we can't compare 1950 to 2018. There's no comparison between the male standard back then and now. So I think that things are redefined. All these things change throughout the years and throughout the centuries. Even men have changed. You said that women are the beautiful sex, but in antiquity, men may have been considered the beautiful sex. So things may have changed since antiquity, and we see this distinction between gay men and straight men. So what is the model of the gay man or the lesbian woman? And now we see that gay men are sometimes more macho than straight men. Don't say normal. Don't say normal. You're talking about straight. So let's not talk about normal. That's not the right word. So the models have changed. Role models have changed. And I think that this is a discussion that changes as society evolves. And we know that society is changing, so everything else is changing too. And it's not that we're trying to do away with things. We're just trying to let people choose. Let them choose the model they want to be. But again, it's a matter of choice. I just want to add one more thing. Intersex people, it's not a disease. You may have external characteristics of men and women, either internally or externally. We may be intersex people because we may have more testosterone or more estrogen levels, and this may be contrary to the sex that we were assigned at birth. And you can do a hormone test and see this and find out. And according to research, there are no 100% straight people. And I think that this is food for thought. Sorry to interfere. Sorry to intervene. We're having a dialogue here. This is something we discussed in person, and I read another study. I'm against numbers. I'm against numbers, says the journalist. And I know that humor is always good, but maybe sometimes studies and statistics and polls, opinion polls, all these create new stereotypes, new stereotype behavior. When they want to close people's minds, yes. When they want to open people's minds, no. I don't think so. But you said that you don't accept me. Did I ever say that? Well, I don't know what you would have done if they hadn't taught you that you had to be straight and a woman. You would have enjoyed your life more. Not just you, but everybody else. How do you know that I'm not enjoying my life right now? Just a minute here. Well, I'm just trying to say here that who knows what I enjoy, what I want to enjoy. A lot of straight guys look at me in the street. They stare at me in the street. That's egocentric, you know. No, I'm talking about the supposedly straight men stare at me with longing, not straight women and gay men. A lot of straight men look at me. Oh, really? No, I'm saying that both. No, sorry. But I think that this is very important. If you actually look at them and stare them, they'll be stared down because they'll be scared. And I'm actually asking questions that come to our mind. So where does this come from? What's the source? We're here, we're discussing, we're trying to look at all the cliches and stereotypes of society. But I think that it would be better, society would be better if we were to leave. Well, don't create this contradiction here. Well, no, I'd like to interrupt you because we're curious. We're curious. We want to learn new things. We're curious. We want to learn. So if there's something new, we want to discover what it is. It's curiosity. I always used to have men wearing pants that would look at me and give me the stares. Costandine, please allow me to interrupt. Everything that we're discussing here and a lot more, well, it's a coincidence that today is the day against stereotypes and all forms of violence and all forms of racism. So it's the International Day Against Racism and Racial Discrimination. So the Migrants Forum has invited groups that have been affected by racism. And today at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Mrs. Mudatu, welcome. I think you had a walk. You organized a walk, and this is a result of a collaboration of many agencies. So you walked against discrimination, and I would like you to tell us a few things about this. Maria Muzatsu is a psychologist, but she's also from Praxis. Praxis is an NGO. Many of us know Praxis. About the actions and activities and initiatives. All people are supporting human rights. Of course, Tsanetos Adipas, a great personality who's a visionary, and his vision has inspired not just all the people of Praxis, Mrs. Mudatu, but also everybody else outside Praxis, those of us who learned about Praxis. And I think you've raised the bar high. It makes us think before we talk. And I think that Mr. Tsanekos Adipas has contributed a lot. And tell us a little bit about his vision. And tell us about the prize, the distinction this year against racism that bears his name.
So if you could please stand up so we can all see you. First and foremost, I'd like to thank you for this possibility to speak. I'm from Praxis. I represent the organization. And I must say that I'm really enjoying this dialogue, and I'm listening and learning things, even though I've been more than 14 years in the field, and I've worked with all groups. And what happened, in fact, a short a while ago is we had the Refugee Forum and we had this walk. We had a lot of collectivities, members of the community, whether they're institutional or not. And we went from the Kotia Square, we went to Victoria Square. That's where we ended. I would not like to name the organizations because there were too many, but what happened there is that we actually gave a prize. It's a prize we gave last year when we lost Xanatos, a person with a unique vision, a vision that is still in our minds, our souls, in our hearts, and not only in practice, but in a more widespread fashion. So it was decided that we would have this distinction, and we would shout his name, and it would be like a relay. It would be given to another person, organization each year. So last year it was given to Praxis. Praxis this year actually gave it to the Intersex Supports Association, and it was in fact there because it wanted to thank for all the care and support to the LGBTQI. I must say that they have truly supported things, especially in the legislation. But I'm very happy to hear you speak. And but I would like to say that the day-to-day life is not so rosy. Well, that's what I wanted to ask you, because on a day-to-day basis, you actually realize a lot of programs, and you're responsible for all the strategies for all the programs, whether we're talking about trafficking, whether we're talking about all forms of racism. I don't like the term social group because we're all together a social group. But what do you actually see in practice? Well, if we actually see what is happening, however optimistic we might want to be, and even though we want to see things differently, and I belong to that group, and this is something that was conveyed to us by Xanatos, and it's something that's still inspiring us. Unfortunately, in Greece, the concept of re-victimization and all this facet actually affects all social groups, and none are spared. So we see that on a day-to-day basis, we see cases whereby the psychologist sees that there are multiple vulnerabilities. So I think this is something that should be better showcased. People who can be from a different country, who belong to the LGBTQI community, and who have been raped. So we're talking about cases that have multiple layers of vulnerability in various shapes and forms, and we must say that Greece is not in a position to deal with it. It is trying to deal with it, but it is not being capable of. The only tool that we have is love, and the possibility that the legislation gives us. That means, on the one hand, we have our humanity, and the legislation on the other should be able to help us, and that should be something that we work with on a day-to-day basis. So we actually received a question in the snf.org questions. Who is competent? Is it the state or civil society? Well, we're all part of civil society. All here today, we're part of civil society. We're all part of the state. It's up to us that changes facts. In 2018, we are pushing for change, and this was true in previous decades. It is up to us. And what is actually happening is the organizations, the civil society organization, are trying to put forward policy making, and they're trying to. So the organizations would not like to continue existing. They would like to do away with themselves because they no longer have a reason to exist. So that's what Xanatos actually said. So what we have to do is to see what is happening around you, to understand what is happening in these 5 years or this decade, and to have an action plan, and to actually go and take that into the schools in order for that to further evolve. And I would like to say that legislation is what will protect us in this entire endeavour. And Xanatos was very far ahead of the rest of us. He was, in fact, ahead of his time in terms of inequality and discrimination. And with respect to all these headings, he actually found a way to work with these things in such a way so that all those politicians who actually passed through various ministries would call him to consult him first. And this was unique. So what remains is that Xanatos is still alive in our minds, and he's trying to take things forward with his way of thinking and his way of speaking. Thank you very much. So we have the lady here who's wanted to take the floor. So could we actually give her a microphone? Until then, I would like, if of course you would like to comment on something, but I would like to also look at the matter of education.
Όχι.
No. Έχω και μια ερώτηση και ήθελα να σχολιάσω. Πώς αντιμετωπίζετε τους ανθρώπους που μεταδίδουν την προπαγάνδα?
Κανείς.
So, actually, that was a question for all of you.
Γενικότερα προπαγάνδα είναι απαράδεκτο.
Generally, propaganda, it's unacceptable. So, you said it's logical for you to look at me, and you said to me it's logical for them to look at your dress. And for somebody, it may be absurd, and they may say, why is she looking like that? And she looks like a caricature. She's not the model of a beautiful woman, that she's tall and thin and wears nice clothes. Maybe that's not the model of the woman they had in mind. So, for example, I may want this type of woman or that type of man. But what I said is that for somebody, it may be very reasonable to look at her, but there are possibilities. There are men who might think of her as unattractive, for example. So propaganda is an easy word, but let's not monopolize it. Let's not monopolize the discussion, because unfortunately we have stereotypes, and there's a wide range of stereotypes. So is it self-criticism to say that it's propaganda to protect human rights and animal rights? So we'd like to hear from you. Yes, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a wheelchair. I'm in a wheelchair, but it's electric. I've had it for some years, but most of my years I had polio, and unfortunately I had many mobility problems. It was difficult for me to move around. Yes, Ioanna Maria Gertsu. My name is Evangelia Tsabazi. Hi, nice to see you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have two cute stereotypes in my life. When I had a manual wheelchair, which reminded people of prams, the life in Thessaloniki, in Macedonia. That's what a toddler said to me. And of course, the mother said, hush, hush, don't say such things. Don't ask difficult questions to the lady in the wheelchair. And I actually had to answer to people who actually didn't know my family, because they asked me the question, is your husband normal? And this was a horrible question. And then there was another question by a woman who was a minister, a member of parliament, excuse me. And they said, how's your child like this? She last saw my child when it was 12, and then she saw it later when it was 16, 17. And my daughter is a lanky, tall, young girl. And she said to me, is this your biological child? And I said, of course it is. But how's this possible? How can you have such a child? And I said, well, after having had sex and with a C-section. And I know I shocked her. So ladies and gentlemen, this is my introduction, and I'd like to invite the Stavros Niarchos Foundation to invite us to the buses that are used to transport citizens from the Athens Center to the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Cultural Center. And then we'll see that those of us with this wheelchair have the possibility to come here. And we will continue, Mrs. Bousdoukou, to be envious and not to be jealous, to be envious of your staccato heels. I know, but I would like to say that you can do a lot of things. So this is trying to take advantage of the fact that I'm present here today. So please help us more. Thank you very much.
Αναφέρθηκες πριν.
So you were talking about education before, but art has also an educational role to play, and it helps us, and it's liberating. But we see that in Greece, would they ever ask an artist? Meaning it's very easy to ask men about women and women about men. But artists in Greece are not out. If they haven't come out, if they haven't said that they're LGBTQI. Well, anyway, so I'm asking, why do we have many people who actually haven't all come out? Well, saying for somebody to say that he's straight or gay, well, this is personal. It's a personal personal piece of data. Now, if somebody is in the arts and if he wants to come out and say that he's gay, well, it's personal. If he wants to say it, fine. If he doesn't want to say it, that's also fine. But this doesn't mean that it's out of fear about what's going to happen later on if this person actually reveals his actually preferences. In art, it's actually easier compared to the situation when somebody works in a bank, for example. Are there any other stereotypes in art? Let's not just talk about gender stereotypes. Of course, you can never exhaust the subject. It's inexhaustible. But let's talk about religious stereotypes. Are there religious stereotypes? And there are many performances that have been actually criticized heavily because they dealt with religious stereotypes. There's a Jesus Christ superstar. There's this performance, and it's playing in Athens now. And many people are attacking them, many religious groups. They said you're not allowed to show such things. And I actually had a theatrical performance that was criticized because I used flags from other countries, and some had reacted. Whereas the use of flags in the theater for any reason, even if you can burn, for example, a flag, which is considered illegal, in the theater, you're actually copying an act, you're mimicking something. It's not you actually carrying out that act. But sometimes some things have been misunderstood in the theater and in art in general. But I think that there is more freedom to express certain things in the theater and in art. And I believe that stereotypes are fewer in the theater and in art. Can I say something? Of course, Joanna, artists with disability, they're also dancers who are visually impaired or with disabilities, and they're also anchor women and anchormen, TV presenters, and so on and so forth. Is it a need? Is it a decision? Is it a choice? I think it's all three. They're all combined because sometimes the other choice, well, that's not really a choice. But anyway, artists, I'd like to see actors who are blind and participating in TV soap operas, for example, and not just showing blind people as stereotypes. For example, a blind man walking with a cane and then undergoing surgery and being able to see again, or anchormen or anchorwomen that are amputees, or fat models, or people who are more obese, for example, and not skinny, and are models. But if you go abroad where you see models with disabilities, models that are of different color, for example, but even there they dealt with in a racist fashion, and they have difficulties. Do you know why? Do you know why they dealt with like that? Because whenever you have a disabled model, it becomes a big deal on Facebook. Like, wow, this person's going to come out, and this person's disabled, and this is a disabled model, and then you blow something way out of proportion. And you said something which shocked me, but it's quite simple. You said that if somebody touches your hair, you may feel that you are being abused, that you are actually being taken care of, but you don't want to be taken care of. Whereas if somebody in public came and touched my hair and took care of me, I wouldn't be scared. It depends on the context. But I might think that there's something in my hair and somebody's trying to take something out of my hair, and this wouldn't bother me. So it's got to do with how you feel and how I feel in that particular situation. And it's as if we are talking, for example, and I think this is very difficult. We're trying to open up all the communication routes at the same time, and that's difficult. It's not at all easy to open up all these communication channels. It's not easy because I think that we create blockages to ourselves anyway. This is true, yes. We sometimes block ourselves, and this can be done for many reasons. First of all, because we want to get our own way, and sometimes because we can't openly judge others, because we may think that what we see out there is wrong, but we can't do it. We feel that we really aren't able to. We talked about religion. I will come back, and I'll come back to you, Eugene, as well. But I think that there's a lady in the audience who'd like to say something, and then we'll listen to Eugene. Jason Antigoni. Here, unfortunately, says Jason Antigoni, we don't have this separation between state and church. We know that we had a priest, Stavros, who was saying to people that they can act violently, but he was acquitted, and so on and so forth. So everything is predetermined. We see that religion is deeply rooted in Greece. Eugene.
It was an interesting discussion between the two of you. I think the reason behind her oversensitivity to being patted on the hair, or about what she mentioned about the model of disability, the reason behind it is the low expectation of people with disability. It's a big news when you see a model with disability or a model who's blind or anything that is popular in pop culture that goes out of the way or chooses a different course or track. So that's why it's our sensitivity to that low expectation that people have of us. It's like there is always this element of shock, like, oh, you've learned all these languages when you're disabled? Well, there's nothing wrong with my ear. Wrong with my ear. It's only my foot, you know? So that's the reason behind it. I wouldn't also like to be petted or taken care of. And in a sense, that would make me feel humiliated because they think that I cannot do it myself. So I think that's the point where the people with disability or who have a certain difficulty in mobility, or be it any other form of disability, it's the thing that it's the low expectation and also the sense of pity that we get often from the public that is just really offensive, and it hurts our feelings. So that's what I wanted to address.
Thank you very much, Eugene. Now, before we actually come back to you, I would like to say that we've actually received other questions, such as how we can actually overcome stereotypes. I think that here there is no answer, but I would like to actually have your positions on how each and every one can avoid falling in the trap of stereotypes, as these are reproduced from outside to the inside. So I think this is the message that you can all convey. I don't know if this is possible, but let's listen to you first. Permit me, Mrs. Bouzloukou, to actually say that what you have just mentioned allows us to connect some points that remained pending. So education or pedagogy is in fact, especially in Greece, a field or a sector where stereotypes are born rather than overcome. And there's a stereotype that might not have the force of symbolism that we might have with your presence here today. Greece is one of the few countries in which for you to actually be the director of the Modern Art Museum, you must have a PhD. Well, this is, in fact, something that we do automatically socially, and that is that academic learning is what gives value. And this is true in few countries worldwide. It's mostly in Greece. That means that society that we've created is not feeling that it's confident and strong enough to say, what have you done? What have you done which is of interest and on which we can judge you? So the stereotype there has to do with each and every one of us, the way that we grew up, the laws that we have forged, and that that you're trying to change, Jason Antigone. But it's very difficult for us to actually overcome this because it's a matter of remaining alert. It's a matter of social science such as environmental protection. We wouldn't talk about recycling if we had stringent laws that would not allow us to deviate. But I would like to come back to what Eugene said in the beginning.
Overwhelmingly graceful, what you said at the beginning. Είπες ότι...
You said that you are in Germany as a guest. And indeed, this is something that actually made the police, the political correct police of Jason Antigone actually react. And we actually had a wonderful pun. So against a host equals a ghost. So a guest and a ghost. So we see this is something that we must always see. We almost feel, in fact, a guest because we always need to actually feel that we are alien. When we feel aliens, that we don't claim for ourselves something that is absolute. So whether it is knowledge or a conquest or as a right or an entitlement. So we're still trying to conquer it. So that means that this has, in fact, a great force to feel a guest everywhere. And it doesn't mean that you feel less because of it. It means that you're engaged, that you're active, that nothing is your own. And what we want to actually consider resistance to a stereotype is this alertness, the guest that Eugene said in the beginning. Well, it's different to be a citizen in a country and to have all the political rights. It's different to be a refugee and to feel a guest. I think that is, in fact, different. So I think I'd like to come back to you very shortly, but I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Vasilakis, and he would like to actually talk about what you just heard. Well, I'd like to say that is the belief the existence of a legal framework that gives us all equal rights actually does not allow what you alluded to happen. I live in the United States, but I'd like to say that the Afro-Americans are considered to be, in fact, equal before the law, but there are very few African Americans who actually are directors of museums. So stereotypes actually come from different directions and they're not actually imposed by the law. But I'd like to put another question, if I may. How does one perceive the diversity, the fact that you should accept that you're different? That is the point where you start making discriminations. So that means that you start perceiving yourself as something that is different from other people, and from the moment that you begin to do that, that is when you start comparing. So I think this is a very ambiguous and ambivalent meaning, and I think that we have to start to think about that. From the moment that we enter into this process, we are actually going into a path that is a lot deeper. I don't know who would like to take the floor. Well, Jason Antigone, different has to do with what is prevalent. I must say that I would like to say it has to do with mainstream. It has to do with norms and regulations and cultural norms. So I don't think that if somebody belongs to a minority that does not actually enjoy equal rights is, well, I don't think it's a bad thing if they feel different. It has to do with political claims and I think it's that which makes you portray your identity as different. So I'd like to look to the others, Konstantinos, Ioanna, Eugene. Oh, so then I'll bring things to a close, slowly but surely. I'd like to say, with respect to what Mr. Vasilakis said, or to actually say in a nutshell, how can each and every one of us not accept this otherness? How we can actually avoid this trap? Are we talking about diversity or stereotypes? The diversity that leads to stereotypes, not to diversity that is respected.
I think it's very difficult. If there's a person who can do that, well, that is admirable. I would admire it. I mean that this complex in which we live in does not allow us, practically speaking, no matter how much we say that we're absolutely free and that we get to choose what we want and we determine our choices by projecting our difference, the system in which we live in, unfortunately, does not allow us to take away stereotypes completely. So we're trapped. We're trapped. And the only way we can move forward is try and smooth out the differences. Ioanna. I agree with Konstantinos in the sense that we all have limits and we all have freedoms. So we try to make the edges less sharp and we try to respect others' rights. It's good for people to know oneself. It's good to listen to your heart. It's good to try and think how far you can go and what you'd like to do and what you can try out in your life, your sexual life, your professional life, and how you can open your wings and fly. Yes. All this makes people different in the good sense of the word, because the important thing is for us to express our difference, our otherness, but we have to do so in a homogeneity, meaning that we are accepted from others. And let me conclude by saying that in order for us to overcome stereotypes, and I'm talking about the very crude stereotypes, each of us should know oneself, listen to our heart, because stereotypes are reproduced in families, through oppression, because we are oppressed sometimes even at home. Meaning a child is born and the child is supposed to follow certain stereotypes, and then the children actually go to society, and it's as if they've been castrated. They have problems inside, whereas outside they look perfect, and nobody can say that I'm not right. One might say, nobody can tell me that I didn't make the right choices. But inside they're confused. So only if we learn ourselves, and if only we respect other people's freedoms and rights, only then can we accept other people. That's what I had to say. Thank you. I don't know if you'd like to add anything. If Eugene, would you like to say something before closing?
As I said in the beginning, I think the key to it is being more curious and educating yourself more about the different and being less afraid of the other. And that comes, if I belong to the minority, if I was the minority, I think that would be my duty to introduce myself in my case, as a person with disability, also as a refugee, to my host, to the majority, and to tell them about myself, so they could stop projecting these stereotypes on me, and also but that also would not stop me from functioning and being my own personal self. So as I said, it's about the key about it is being more curious and stop this negative thinking or this negative view on the other, and being just, more open to the other, its culture, its language, its religion, everything. And that would lead to a big relief for both parties, I think, because hate and fear are exhausting. Yeah.
Θέλω να σας ευχαριστήσω πάρα πολύ.
I'd like to thank you all very much. Thank you for participating in the discussion. And I'm talking about the panelists, but also the audience and those watching us through the internet. So regardless of where we are, we don't want to be trapped. We don't want to be obsessed. I think that we shouldn't be stuck in stereotypes. I think and now you've accepted, what about women and men? So you used male personal pronoun. You should have also used the female personal pronoun. But anyway. So I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank you all for participating in the discussion. The goal is to engage in dialogue. And I think that only through dialogue can we move forward if we are to move forward, because otherwise we'll be stuck. And that's bad because we have blinkers on. It's good to get rid of our blinkers. And of course, it's easier said than done. Thank you, Nujeen Mustafa. Thank you coming for this event. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming all the way from Germany through Orchestra Foundation. I'd also like to warmly thank Jason and Digoni Dane for immediately accepting the invitation to be with us here this evening. So thank you for contributing to this discussion. I'd like to thank Konstantinos Rigos. Thank you. Konstantinos is someone very popular, someone we like very much. People who are popular in Greece normally don't speak openly, but it's good to speak openly because it'll open up our minds, it'll open up our heads. Off mic. Off mic, we couldn't hear what was said, I'm sorry. I would also like to thank Ioana Maria Gertsu and May, the dog, the Labrador. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for this wonderful dialogue. I'd like to thank Maria Nudatsu for the initiative. And thank you for telling us about praxis and the vision of Danetos Antipas. And we see that his vision is being implemented and various actions are materializing. So let us hope that there will be no further need for all these NGOs out there, because I know that they are trying to deal with racism. I'd like to say that I won't be closing this evening. I'd like to say that we will be seeing you again next month, because in April we will again have an event. It'll be the 6th event of Dialogues. But now I'd like us to welcome the cross-cultural choir of the GNO, the Greek National Opera. This started at the initiative of the alternative scene and the educational actions of the GNO. Its members are either residing permanently or temporarily in Athens. They come from different countries. And today, just like last year, the cross-cultural choir actually has gone to refugee sites, and it also organized open concerts, open-air concerts in Omonia. The Stavros Niarchos Foundation provided the grant, and I'd like to say that the members of the choir are transported with the help of the supporters of the and friends of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation. Now, the conductor is Vasula Veli. So at our event, the choir is accompanied by the musicians, Mr. Paxakis, Georgos Vendouris, and we'll also hear traditional songs, traditional music from the countries of origin of some of the choir members, meaning from Greece, from the Ukraine, Tanzania, and Andalusia. Thank you.
you.
Σας ευχαριστούμε για ακόμα μία φορά όλους και μην ξεχνιόμαστε.
I'd like to thank you all once again, and let us not forget we will actually meet again in April. Thank you.